The battlefield echoed with the relentless roar of artillery, drowning out the anguished cries of soldiers and the pounding of heartbeats in the midst of chaos. But amidst the smoke, explosions, and danger, there were those who remained undaunted. Women with faces etched in determination moved swiftly and efficiently. These were the American nurses on the front lines during World War II, unsung heroes whose courage and unwavering commitment to saving lives amid overwhelming odds would alter the course of wartime medicine forever. As the war surged across the globe, the role of nurses transformed from mere caregivers to the beating heart of military medical operations. They were the first responders to combat injuries, enduring the same perilous conditions that soldiers faced. American nurses, though often left out of the larger historical narrative, played a crucial role in ensuring that soldiers injured in battle lived to see another day. Their extraordinary bravery, adaptability, and skill dramatically reduced the mortality rate and forever changed how we approach medical care in wartime. The call to action for these women began early in the war, as the Army Nurse Corps ANC was thrust into service. Many of them were civilians before joining, without formal military training, yet their resolve to serve with the same sense of duty that had motivated generations before them led them to the front lines. The ANC, originally established during World War I, evolved greatly by the time World War II came. Now, it would take on an even greater responsibility. What these women faced during the war would be unlike anything they'd ever imagined. The conditions were grueling. Field hospitals were established in tents, often under fire, in areas where sanitation was a luxury and medical supplies were sparse. They worked in scorching heat and torrential rain, with the constant threat of air raids and bombings looming overhead. Despite all these challenges, these nurses tirelessly worked to provide care for the wounded, showing the world the true meaning of resilience. With little in terms of technology, the nurses used their ingenuity to create medical solutions that would revolutionize wartime care. In an era where medicine was still developing, they quickly adapted to the evolving demands of battlefield care. Basic procedures such as setting up intravenous lines and stabilizing patients were carried out in the most trying conditions, circumstances that would have been deemed impossible in any civilian hospital. One of the most pressing challenges these nurses faced was the overwhelming number of casualties. Soldiers poured into their makeshift hospitals daily, men who had been shot, bombed, or burned. Many arrived with devastating injuries that required immediate attention, pushing these women to their limits. By the end of the conflict, the ANC had grown from a small group of volunteers to a massive force of over 59,000 nurses deployed across the globe. They were stationed in Europe, the Pacific, North Africa, and other critical battle zones. Despite the chaos around them, these women never faltered. The explosion of the Army Nurse Corps was met with a call for rapid action. Nurses, whether experienced or new to the field, had little preparation for the violence they would encounter. They trained as they worked, learning to adapt to the chaotic environment. The pace was brutal and the stakes were higher than ever. These women worked alongside surgeons, often in life-or-death situations, learning to improvise with the limited resources available to them. One particularly harrowing challenge they faced was the treatment of soldiers with burn injuries, which became all too common with the use of incendiary weapons. The nurses had to quickly devise new treatment methods. Many were thrust into burn wards that tested their limits, physically and emotionally. Many nurses had little to no experience with such catastrophic injuries and had to learn quickly, working under immense pressure. Yet despite the overwhelming grief of seeing soldiers suffering from injuries that seemed beyond help, these nurses persevered, displaying not only physical strength but incredible emotional resilience. Many nurses were also thrust into emergency surgeries, adapting to the role of life-saving surgeons in real time. With limited resources and only basic tools at their disposal, they performed amputations, treated internal injuries, and stabilized patients for evacuation. These actions would go on to form the basis of modern combat medicine. Their triage skills became a vital part of battlefield operations. Nurses were required to prioritize care, making life-or-death decisions with very little information. Their decisions in the field saved the lives of countless soldiers, by ensuring that those with the best chances of survival were treated first. These nurses adapted, often in makeshift conditions, to meet the overwhelming needs of the soldiers who relied on them for their survival. While the physical toll on the nurses was immense, the emotional weight was equally heavy. They formed bonds with the soldiers they cared for. These men were not just patients but brothers in arms. The nurses were often the first line of comfort, writing letters to soldiers' families, comforting the wounded, and holding their hands as they passed away. In the midst of the chaos, these women found ways to create small moments of comfort, whether through a kind word or a touch on a soldier's shoulder. Despite the constant danger, these nurses were committed to the mission. Air raids and artillery fire were part of their daily lives, yet they never turned away from their duties. Nurses were often the first to reach soldiers on the battlefield, carrying them to safety and performing triage in the heat of combat. Some nurses were even captured by the enemy, only to later be freed in prisoner exchanges. But throughout it all, their resolve never wavered. In the Pacific Theater, where the jungle terrain and diseases ravaged soldiers and nurses alike, the Army Nurse Corps proved its extraordinary resilience. These nurses worked in small, isolated medical stations, often surrounded by tropical diseases and extreme weather. Despite these conditions, they continued to serve with unwavering dedication. By 1943, the American nurses were instrumental in the creation of mobile Army surgical hospitals, MASH units, providing rapid response medical care close to the front lines. These units helped stabilize soldiers before they were transferred to larger, more secure hospitals. The nurses worked tirelessly to provide the best care possible, saving thousands of lives in the process. Their ingenuity and resourcefulness in the face of constant danger became a model for wartime medical care. The legacy of these nurses did not go unnoticed. Initially met with skepticism, their valor on the battlefield soon earned them the respect of military personnel. Many nurses received commendations for their bravery, with some even being promoted to higher military ranks. The importance of their contributions was finally recognized by the government, and their status within the military grew. The Army Nurse Corps became a symbol of strength and resilience, and these women were forever recognized for their role in the war. After the war, the contributions of these nurses endured. The innovations in battlefield medicine they introduced would go on to shape medical practices for decades. The experiences of the nurses also helped open doors for women in the military, creating opportunities for greater inclusion in the armed forces. The Army Nurse Corps, once a small and often overlooked organization, became a model for modern wartime medical care. Yet, it's important to remember that these nurses didn't serve for recognition. They were driven by an overwhelming sense of duty and a belief in the importance of their work. For many, the emotional and psychological toll of the war remained with them long after the fighting had ceased. Despite this, their commitment to serving others remained unwavering. They were often overshadowed by the men they treated, but their role was indispensable. Without them, countless soldiers would have never returned home. In recent decades, the story of these nurses has finally started to come to the forefront. Documentaries, books, and historical research have worked to highlight their pivotal role in the war. Though their contributions were ignored for so long, these nurses are now rightly recognized as the heroes they were. Their bravery, sacrifice, and innovations in medical care have ensured their legacy will live on. The American nurses who served during World War II were not just caregivers, they were pioneers. Their courage, resourcefulness, and unwavering commitment to saving lives during the most challenging times in history changed military medicine forever. Their work laid the foundation for modern trauma care and continues to save lives today. In the end, the story of the American nurses in World War II is one of extraordinary bravery and sacrifice. These women were heroes, and their legacy is one that should never be forgotten.